Welcome to the show. If you've ever made a clothing donation to your local thrift store, or perhaps any of those clothing drop boxes you see tucked away in public parking lots, you've become part of a used textile market worth more than $4 billion every year. Tonight, we're pleased to welcome Executive Director of Horizon Goodwill Industries, Mr. John McCain. John, we know your industry, or we know that Goodwill really to many people is about the donation and resale of goods. I know personally you're about a lot more about
Absolutely.
than that. But let's talk first about the textiles.
Okay.
Tell me how textiles are processed through Goodwill and what happens to them.
Okay, so we at Goodwill are what you might call a social enterprise, or at least the business of taking those donations and turning them into jobs is a social enterprise. So in a lot of ways, when you donate clothes to Goodwill, each bag represents 1 hour of paid work training for a person with a disability or some other barrier to employment. So when you make those donations, the first thing is we employ someone to greet you, to take your donation, to give you a tax receipt if that's what you want, and so that's one job. We then take those donations inside our building and we do what's known as a pre-sort. So we take all manner of things, not just textiles. We take small electrics, some furniture, books, shoes, any type of household item that has value. So we create another job by taking those and dividing those out into the types of items they are. So we separate clothes from clothes, accessories from accessories, shoes, books, etc. Then that is taken to another area where you might call them the buyers of Goodwill. They look through all of these things and determine whether or not this is what we might call store quality. Now, if you donate a bag of clothes to us, it's entirely possible you don't know exactly what's in that bag. It might have been sitting there for a while. But they could have rips, they could have stains, paint. We've had clothes donated with paint on them. And those are clearly not going to sell in our stores. Most people are not going to buy those things. So that's another job that we've created, what we call our sorter, just sorting out the recycled material from the store material. Then, depending on what the item is, there's another layer of processing to it. When it comes to clothes, what we will do is we will pay someone called a hanger, and that's exactly what it sounds like. They'll take that article of clothing, put it on a hanger, and it teaches you a skill because you have to discern between adult and children's clothes, tops and bottoms. So you have to put the right hanger to the right article of clothing. And of course, we teach them the way to do that, so hopefully it won't fall off the hanger.
Right.
Then we take it back to yet another person that we call the tagger. And you have these tagger tails, which are just barbs that are shot through with a little gun. And those have a paper tag attached to that. And it's a secret code, and if you're a shopper at Goodwill, you kind of know what that code's about. But we have them in different colors. And so those different colors represent the schedule that it was hung, and then the schedule it will be pulled. Okay. So if we're hanging, say, yellow on this week, it'll be in our stores for 4 weeks. At the end of that 4 week, if you go into our store on Sunday, everything with the yellow tag is going to be 99 cents. So we're trying our level best to try to get that sold at the store level. So that creates jobs at the store levels. You've got someone who puts a price on the price tag, you've got someone who puts it out on the racks, and then you've got a cashier who's going to ring up your purchase. Comes back to our warehouse if it doesn't sell, and then we take all of those items of clothing, we put them in a baler, we call it, and the baler puts those clothes into 1,000-pound bales. And we sell those to jobbers who take it all over the world.
Wow.
Interesting little idea. If you've been to, or you've seen Super Bowls and basketball championships, and immediately the winners have T-shirts that say, hey, we're the Super Bowl champions.
Right.
You ever think about what happens to those T-shirts for the losers?
I actually have.
Okay. Well, what happens in those a lot of cases is, in some cases, they're donated to Goodwill, maybe to other organizations, and those end up on someone's going to wear that in Central South America or Africa or someplace.
It's not going to have a connection to whatever professional team.
Exactly
we don't
right.
Want them to have.
Exactly
the
right.
Buffalo Bills had 4 in a row. Their shirts went down.
So,
exactly right.
they obviously they're hard skills, but
Yes.
the other piece, and I know as an employer, one of the important things for me is not just the hard skills,
Right.
because I can generally teach you the hard skills. It's the soft skills, getting to work on time, not
absolutely.
being a rotten person while you're
Absolutely.
at work. How does Goodwill address that? Do you address that with your employees,
We
with your clients?
Yeah, we absolutely do that because every client who comes to us is assigned an employability manager. And so the nice thing about having a direct employment working experience is that you get practice in that. You know what it's like when you don't show up on time, and they explain to you the consequences of that, or not show up at all.
Right.
They explain to you what it's like to make sure that you get along with your coworkers. And we had over 206 separate people hire our graduates in 2015.
Wow.
206 employers that we worked with. And so the important thing that they need to understand is when you get to that employer, they want you to be on time. They want you to get along with folks. And every single one of those 206 employers will tell you, please make sure they understand the soft skills. We can teach them what they need to know
Right.
about our particular job.
So there are others in the clothing market. I'm
Yes.
going to turn it over to some of our other panelists. Ken.
Yeah, sure. So, one of my biggest concerns I've always had with the Planet Aid boxes is
So Planet Aid being another
Planet
of
Aid
the
being-
donation boxes that we see a lot.
Those yellow
Right.
donation boxes that we see sitting in the grocery store parking lots. A lot of those, the donations themselves, don't stay local.
Right.
And the money that comes out of those donations don't stay local.
Correct.
I know there's a lot of controversy over the fact that most of Planet Aid's funding actually goes to overhead instead of actually doing good. About how much of Goodwill's donations and funding do you think actually stays in the local area?
I would say almost all of it. I don't know an exact percentage because, most of our expenses are on payroll. We gave a paycheck to over 1,000 people last year in the 4-state area that we serve. So, if you take everything that we added up between wages and taxes and benefits and workers' comp insurance, that in itself is about 75 to 80% of all the money that we raise goes into those types of personnel expenses. We also, we have things like we have to pay, First Energy. Right, we have to pay
Right.
the phone bill. We're a social enterprise, but we're still a business. Have the
Right.
same bills that everybody else has. So how much of that is considered local, and how much of that goes otherwise? I couldn't say. But the major portion of what we spend stays right in the 17 county area we serve.
So one of the things I found interesting is the fact that if you look at Charity Watch, and Charity Watch is touted to be one of the best, the leading kind of advocacy groups or just a group that really keeps an eye on charities and gives
Right.
them a grade A through F.
Sure.
So Charity Watch gave Planet Aid an F. And I did some comparison, and here's some interesting statistics. So the cost to raise $100, so the cost to actually raise $100 worth of goods or whatever, it costs Charity Watch spends $79 to do that.
Wow.
Now, not Horizon Goodwill, because
No.
I couldn't get down that low, but Goodwill International, guess what the Goodwill cost is? Do you know? Probably do.
We try to keep it under 12 cents.
Yeah. So they said the total cost though is $8.
Okay.
So let me see. I can either spend $8 to raise 100, or I
Right.
can spend 79.
Right.
Same thing on the program percentage for Planet Aid. 75% goes to overhead. Goodwill, 14%. I mean, that's huge.
It is.
That is huge.
And at the local level, we keep our overhead down to about 8 to 10% as well.
Wow, that's incredible. Brian.
What are particular needs for Goodwill in terms of clothing, like season-wise? Anything in particular that's really a hot item that people might want to donate to your
Well,
organization?
naturally, it is hot.
Yep.
And unfortunately for us, when people clean out their closets and they go through things, we have a ton of winter clothes,
Yeah.
which no one wants right now. So if we could get things in season, that would certainly help the situation. So you go out and buy a new summer wardrobe, let us have your old summer wardrobe. That would be very helpful. One of the things that I've noticed that perhaps people don't realize we accept in donations are what I just call in general housewares. Dishes, cups, silverware, flatware, things of that nature. We sell almost all of that we get, but a lot of times people donate heavy on clothing, not so much on what I call the houseware type items.
Okay.
Very good.
Tom?
Yeah, and I'm just curious as to where some of your, other than the physical donations,
Right?
where does some of your funding come from? Say this operation
Sure,
here.
sure. Well, so we have other social enterprises besides the donated goods retail, which we call it. So a big chunk of what we do is in contracts for the state of Maryland and for the federal government, which we also perform in West Virginia. So we do custodial training programs. We have other types of programs where you can learn things like a mailroom. We do a mailroom at a government facility. So a lot of the funding comes from there.
Oh, so some of it is from government then,
Correct.
too? Yeah,
But
Correct.
but there's a difference. I think what he's describing, it's not a government handout. It's not he's not applying for funding. He is going.
I just asked you.
No. But I think it's an important distinction. That
Right.
he
Yes,
is,
no, but I
he is
mean,
working
it's,
for
yeah.
their clients are working for the
Right.
government, providing
Yeah.
services that the government would have to pay for otherwise.
Correct.
In a
Correct.
competitive market.
Yes, but I think it's still coming. We're
It
supporting
is.
it.
You are.
It
yes,
is,
in
yes.
that sense,
That's
yes.
that's all. I was just curious, you know, because again, some of these other people, I don't know where planets, you know. I think they get it from all the stuff they get and they sell. I mean, they're trying to make
Sure.
money off of the bundled goods and things in a way.
So
you know.
typically, Planet 8 has not had retail stores like we have
Yes,
in our
yeah.
region. So they just kind of skip that step and go straight into the bulk sales.
Yes. Yeah.
Interesting.
I wonder what percentage of their donors are misled by, and that's a rhetorical question.
Yeah.
but I mean, I can't imagine that it's not a high percentage. I really just can't imagine that it's not off the
Yeah.
charts.
Well, unfortunately, I've talked to people about those bins before, and they're like, "Oh, well, isn't that the same as just giving it to Goodwill?" And I'm like,
People
"No,
don't know, yeah.
Tell them
no,
no.
it doesn't stay
Yeah.
local."
Right.
Yeah, tell them no. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out after reading this, and the businesses that I frequent that have these bins in their parking lot, I'm going to explain to them what this company actually does, and maybe they'll change their mind. Maybe we can get a Goodwill bin there. In leaving, I'm going to tell you, and unfortunately it's over for this year, but in May of every year, usually May,
Right.
Goodwill has what it calls the Power of Work dinner, and I've been honored to be there every year for the last probably 10 years. And if you go to only one charity event in the year, by golly, that ought to be it. You will not leave there with dry eyes seeing the impact that Goodwill has on these people's lives. So that's all the time we have on that. Next up on the flip side, our panel weighs in on the DNC this week and much more. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.